I get up and nothing's going to get me down. I'm going, oh, toughest around. No, baby, I know how I feel. You gotta go.
The punch in is to get the one real.
What's up?
Not much. I haven't heard that song in a long time.
Oh man,
I don't have the words in front of me like some people.
Hey, I didn't even know the words even with them in front of me. Guys, welcome to the Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius Mirshahzadeh, and boy, do we have a special guest for you today, my friend, mi amigo, Ken Sim. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, buddy, how you doing?
Oh my gosh, I'm doing a lot better now that you're here. It's been a little while since we've gotten to hang out.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I do a little bit of housekeeping?
Yeah, sure. Go nuts.
So for you veterans of the show, you guys know that the Greatness Machine, we're about two things: people that are living their passions and those who are creating greatness in the world. And my friend Ken is neither short of passion or greatness. He and we met many, many moons ago, and we're going to be talking about a ton of great stuff. But first of all, guys, we're live. So start a watch party. Share this with many friends. We got a veteran, super experienced founder, CEO, chairman. He's got the whole list of accolades, best of this, best of that. I'll be diving deep. The guy's done it everywhere from the private sector to almost the public sector. We'll be going there as well. And start a watch party. Ask us questions. My team's on standby. Amber will be there to send questions our way. But before we get there, I want to give a little bio on my buddy Ken. So Ken and I, we met. Oh gosh, June of 2006, 14 year. It's our 15-year anniversary, June of next year. We're going to have a big celebration, just he and I. Where's my glasses? I can't read. But yeah, no, we met at the coveted Birthing a Giants program that you guys hear me talk so much about. In fact, Ken is a big part of the book. He planted the seed for what has now become the bestseller that we know and love, known as the Core Value Equation, that came out last week. So we can thank Ken for all of your guys' hours of enjoyment and reading when it comes to this book. But Ken is a serial entrepreneur. He is a father, first and foremost. I always like to start off father and husband, dad, serial entrepreneur, chairman, co-founder of Nurse Next Door, Rosemary Rock Salt. He was the former mayoral candidate of the city of Vancouver, one of the biggest, most best cities of the world. And from what I hear, there's whispers of that you might be running for that again in 2022. Are you thinking about that, my friend?
Well, it is 753 days from now, but I'll
counting.
Well, listen, unless there's some kind of family health issue or something really weird going on, I will be running for mayor of Vancouver in 2022.
Oh man, I'm so pumped. We're gonna get you here before you win that bad boy. But yeah, no, Ken. So Ken and his former business partner John and I were in the same class together at BOG. And as many of you guys know, I talk about this a lot on the show, and I talk about it in the book. You know, I had this moment, and there was this moment in my class where Ken had done this peer-to-peer workshop with our entire class. And it was essentially asking us if we knew our core values, if our team knew our core values, if our customers knew our core values. And we all sat down with the exception of Ken and John. And I was in the first group that sat down, and it stung hard. So the next morning I woke up, I was hungover because we graduated the night before, so we went out partying in Boston. I was hungover.
We never did that. What are you talking about?
I did that. Ken had a nice cozy sleep. He saw us off on the party bus, made sure that we got home safely, but he was neither a part of that, nor does he recollect any of it. But I drank a lot. That's just because I was stung by the peer-to-peer workshop the day before where I sat down. But one thing stood out to me was that Ken was standing at the end of that workshop, and it forever has been ingrained in my brain. and it became the beginning of what became a huge quest for me to learn how to build a core value-driven organization. And I will say this, first of all, thank you, my friend. So much gratitude for you.
No, thank you. Thank you. And it was a joint effort. There are a lot of us, look, as nice that it is to, be acknowledged for that at our organization, it's the entire company that lives and breathes it. So it's not just me.
Yeah, no, I'm not taking credit away from them for being a core value-driven business, but leadership starts from the top. Everyone who hears me bash our president hears me say that all the time. Leadership starts from the top. So you got to be a mentor for me in that way, and yeah, it literally led to a 14-year journey or 12-year journey, excuse me, and where I ended up publishing a book out of it. So huge acknowledgement to you and John for doing that, and then after that we reconnected in 2017. We're now part of the GOT group that I talk about all the time. So I get to spend a decent amount of time with this guy, considering we don't live in the same country and we're not in the same businesses or anything like that. But how are you doing, man?
Doing. All things considered, great. It's been a tough slug with COVID and the whole world shutting down and then pivoting. Be it politics or business or family and friends. It's thankfully everyone's safe and healthy, and our businesses are still standing. So I think it's been a big win, all things considered.
So you're one of the guys I looked up to in business, and for those of you guys that know me and have read my book or know me in business, know that I'm a kind of a serial entrepreneur myself, and the type of person that's kind of a typical entrepreneur, all over the place, new shiny object. It's hard, right? Because you kind of get that ADD-ness. And I will tell you, the first guy I ever met that, in my opinion, had his shit together was you. And I saw you running Nurse Next Door, and you guys were implementing all these great systems, whether it be scaling up, top grading. I mean, you guys were literally super users of all these systems. And from that, you've set yourself up in a way where you've done what many entrepreneurs dream of doing, where you've built these businesses, you're not operating them, you've taken a step back, you've brought in, people that I would assume are better than you are at operating a business. Yep. And now you've gotten to design a life where you're doing some cool things like running for mayor of Vancouver, and amongst, I know, a lot of other things. But what are your thoughts around that? How did you think this is what I'm going to do? Can you give us some background on that?
Wow. Well, how much time do you have?
Yeah, we got a lot of time. We got about an hour. Let's do it.
It's interesting. About 5 years before we moved, we switched the role of CEO. So John and I were co-CEOs, and about 5 years before we changed the role of CEO, we spoke to all of our mentors, and we were asking for advice as to, what do you look for when you hire a CEO? And everyone gave us the same advice. It's look, hopefully you hire someone that you've known for maybe 10 or 15 years, been there, done that, has grown a business from, let's say, $100 million to $500 million. It was pretty cookie cutter. And this one person, Milt Wong, our mentor, he said, Ken, you're going to lose your identity. And I was like, what do you mean? It's Ken, you're going to go through depression and you're going to lose your identity, because we get identity not by what we, our title or how much money we have. We get identity by how people interact with us. And so I was like, great, awesome, thanks, Milt. And so I wrote that down in my little notebook. And 5 years later, when I changed my role, I went through depression. I knew it was coming. I thought I could avoid it, but no, it's something that I struggled with. And then you sort of step back and you realize, oh my God, everyone who's been through this process, or almost everyone, has struggled through the same stuff. And so to answer your question, what did it look like? It was ugly. It was really ugly, but once you get through it, it's kind of like having a kid. It's scary. The first one, absolutely crazy. When you have a second one, you're kind of a veteran. When you have four like me, my God, you don't even pay attention to the fourth one, right? It's what's that person's name? And so I know I gave you some rambling thoughts there, but you know what? I guess what I'd leave you with is other people have been through this journey. It isn't what you expect based on my experience. You ask for a lot of advice. You think it's going to look a certain way, and it doesn't.
Was the idea around that you just didn't want to operate the business, or that this is like part of the journey of building a business is if you could take yourself out of it, it makes the business more worthwhile, or more, there's more value in the business because it's not dependent on the owner operator.
Sure. You know what? There's so many different thoughts. First of all, I'm always concerned about whether or not I get hit by a bus. Right. If something happens to me, what actually happens to all the people that rely on the company or the companies? We have team members, we have shareholders, we have our clients. We actually touch, hundreds of thousands of lives. And if the company is dependent on me, I've actually done a really poor job of building a company. I built something that pays homage to Ken, and I've made myself indispensable, but the company's not worth very much, and it's at serious risk. So that was probably the biggest driver. Once I got through losing my identity, I realized, in theory before, that you could hire someone better than you. And I truly believe that. After I went through this process, I really believe it. And, I always thought I was a great operator. And, I'm a lean trained, certified black belt. I understand operational workflow. You know what? I actually don't enjoy it as much. And there are people that are 100 times better at all this stuff. So why not hand it off? I want to rewind though. So you came from investment banking world, right? Yep.
And did John come from investment banking as well?
No, he would dabble in investments with some privately held companies in the technology space, and then we sort of partnered up. We got introduced through a mutual mentor back in 2001.
And so why don't you tell the audience a little bit about Nurse Next Door and the story of Nurse Next Door, because I think it's a really cool story and how it came to be.
Sure. So in no particular order, I was an investment banker. I actually hated my job at the time, and so I was looking to quit. And I was going to quit in January 2001. And about 3 weeks before, my wife and I found out she was pregnant with our first kid. And so I hated my job so much, decided to quit anyways. And we both came back home, and we went from 2 great incomes and no kid to literally no income, 1 kid on its way, and living in my mom's basement.
Oh no.
Yeah. And so anyways, I come back home to Vancouver, and I see my mentor, a guy by the name of Milton Wong. He became the chairman of our company. Chatted with him for a bit, and then he chatted with John as well within a week of each other, and he put us together, and we hit it off. We liked each other, and we decided to look at starting a business or buying a business. So we looked at a bunch of technology companies, garment manufacturers, you name it, we looked at it. And my wife comes back home, and she gets put on emergency bed rest, and she needed to get some help. And so we tried to hire some caregivers. We had some pretty scary experiences, and we put 2 and 2 together and decided, well, you know what, let's start up a home healthcare company.
Wow.
And that's the start of Nurse Next Door. So kind of dumb luck, if you think about it. Dumb luck that I hated my job. Dumb luck that we quit, despite the fact that Teena was pregnant. Dumb luck that we're looking to start something, and if she doesn't go on emergency bed rest, Nurse Next Door never exists.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's crazy. Yeah. So it was because of her being on emergency bed rest. You're like, we can't get good health care, good care, or care that you found to be satisfactory. Yeah. So you guys start this business, and when did you guys? So this is back in 2001. It sounds like. Yeah,
we launched in October of 2001. So if you think about the situation at the time, you have a couple of guys who really don't know what they're doing. Like, we think we're smart, but we've never run a business before. And then we stumble upon this thing, and then we're about to launch our company, and 9/11 happens. And look, I don't want to take any away from the fact that it was a horrendous time, and there's so many people affected. And starting a company, whatever, not a big deal in that context. But in the context of starting up a company with no experience, with the whole world shutting down, probably not the best time to start, but we did it anyways, and we launched in October of 2001.
Oh, you think that's a bad time to launch? No way.
No.
No, I mean,
you know what? As entrepreneurs, it's actually probably the best time. But when you're 29, 30 years old and you've never done it before, and you don't have all these peers, and you don't have a network that have been through these challenges. Yeah, it's scary at the time, for sure.
So fast forward, like you and I, we met 5 years later, and you guys from that launch in October of 1, even less than 5 years later, you guys grew significantly, and you guys decided to go into a franchise model. Isn't that correct?
Yeah. So I guess we had two businesses. We had our home healthcare business, and then we got into the facility staffing business as well, where you actually, basically provide all the people to run long-term care facilities, or, SNFs, whatever you want to call them down in the US. And we grew that business. It was hyper growth. We grew from basically 0 to 1,300 employees in a year and a half.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was crazy. We were on a rocket ship, and and then that's when we went to GOT.
Was that and how much that was company owned versus franchise?
The facility staffing business was completely company owned.
Wow. So you guys were basically, did you raise money to go acquire long-term care facilities? Was that what that was?
No, it was, we didn't put a dime into any kind of physical asset. The long-term care facility owners, they hired us to actually provide all the people to run their facilities.
Got it. So they were outsourcing essentially to you guys?
That's right.
Interesting. And so wow. So when I met you guys, it was, and at that point you guys were franchising, or you were not when I met you?
Yeah, we had started franchising, but we were a small company. I think I guess we started in 2007, so the year after we met, and I think we awarded 3 locations in our first year, and then 19 in the second year. So we were a small company back then.
And so since then, you guys what have you guys kept the long-term care? Or did you guys move out of that?
No, and it sort of ties into your what you talk about, core values as well. It didn't fit with our core values. We wanted to, 2 of our core values, wow customer experience, and admire people. And I'm not trying to knock long-term care facilities, but they're actually really complicated, and they're basically, they're factories. And by the way, we know a lot of long-term care facility owners, great people. The people that put their loved ones in there, they really care. And I actually had my mom in a long-term care facility for 8 years, so I'm not trying to knock them at all. But they are factories, and that didn't align with what we wanted to do. We actually wanted to provide an amazing experience for every one of our clients, where we can get into people's lives and figure out what their goals were and what their dreams are, and actually make them happen. You can't do that in a long-term care facility where you only have, 0.3 hours per client per day to, bathe, feed, activities, the daily living, so it didn't fit with what we wanted to do. And so we actually got rid of that business. As an aside, there's another core value story, because I'm looking at your book right now behind you. It reminded me, we had a client that represented something like 80% of our facility staffing business at the time, but they didn't live our core values, or we didn't think they lived our core values. They treated our people poorly. And so we said, forget this, we're going to fire the client. And we kept all our people. And it was hard. It took us 5 years to bounce back from that, but it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, I remember that was one of the things that you guys talked about, was that, are you willing to fire your top producer essentially for your core values? And I talk about that in the book. I say that, look, it's one of those things where a lot of businesses run, especially high growth business, you're kind of flying off the seat of your pants, and and you'll bring in customers sometimes that aren't aligned with the core values, or you'll bring in a top producing salesperson or a top producing operations person, and they're crushing it, but they're doing it at the detriment of other people, right? Like they're rubbing everyone the wrong way throughout the whole process. So I remember you guys said you guys fired this client, this huge client of yours,
Yeah.
and kind of went into the abyss. What was one of the, like, having been through that, what, like, there was a day where you're like, they're no longer our client, and yet you had built this infrastructure and this team to support that many people. What happened? Did you have to lay off people? How did that work?
Well, a couple of things. One of the nice things was the people that worked at the facilities, they actually got jobs at the facilities. So you know what, they were taken care of. But our internal infrastructure, we didn't lay off a single person. I remember the day like it was yesterday, where we walked in to a team meeting and we said, look, this is what we're going to do. We have to deliver core values, and so we're going to fire the client. And we thought people would be terrified, and people started to cheer.
Wow.
Yeah. And so now, funny story, one of the learnings there, and you have to go forward another 6 or 7 years. Like I said, when we started, we're learning by doing, and you know so much more now than you did, let's say 10 years ago or 15 years ago. We screwed that one up. There probably wasn't a core value violation. What happened was there were a lot of politics. So we would go to this the owner's management team. We would tell them, look, we don't like the way we're treated, and something has to give, or we won't be here. And in hindsight, what they did was they ran to their facility owner and said, hey, look, these guys are idiots. So we got caught in politics. And so I remember meeting the owner of the facility years later, and I actually thanked him. Said, you know what, the people at your company didn't treat our people well, but you know what, you're actually a good person, and I know you got played, and we screwed that one up. And without you, we actually wouldn't have the company we have today. And so for that, I am so thankful. And we reconnected. We're friends, and it was a massive mistake, because remember, we gave up 80% of our business, and that was 13 years ago.
Wow.
And we probably still have the client today, except for it'd probably be 8 or 10 times larger as well. Like that was a pretty big screw up. But you learn. Yeah,
hindsight's always 20/20. So had you done it differently, what, you would have just gone to the facility owner and been like, hey man, we have some issues with your team. Is that maybe the approach you would have taken?
I wouldn't have been as naive. We would have, we would have worked through it. But going back to the whole CEO thing, I know there are things I'm good at, and there are things that I'm not good at. And I know there are things that other people are really good at. In hindsight, would have hired an amazing CEO who knew how to navigate those issues and still live our purpose and our core values. And if we had that person, we'd have this, massive client that would be just, it would have been amazing.
Why? Because that client got much larger is what happened? Is that what you're saying? Or you would have stayed in that business?
We might have actually stayed in that business.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. And so I want us to take a step back though. So, for me, I got introduced to core values in 2006 at Birthing of Giants. I had no idea like obviously we know what values are. Every human being knows that, but I didn't know about scaling up. I didn't know about any of that stuff. I got introduced to it through Vern directly. Literally, like my first day of learning about like scaling up was like when I started Birthing of Giants. And I was not an EO member. I don't know if you knew that. I was the only non-EOer in our class. You didn't have to be an EO back then to be an BOG. I applied through Inc. magazine, and so so for me it was trial by fire, and I just did it. I did it wrong every which way from Sunday. For you, like, how did you guys like figure out how to do it better? Because clearly you figured out a better way to do it. How did you guys come upon?
No, we did the same thing you did, and everything's a pattern, right? We went through the same stuff you did. So when we started Nurse Next Door in 2001, you got to remember you had a couple of guys who thought they knew everything in the world. And so we tried to recreate everything, and it was a blessing because we struggled through a lot of stuff. And then we were introduced to Vern Harnish and the Rockefeller Habits of the Time now, which is scaling up. And we started to like piss ourselves laughing because we went through all the same stuff that everyone else goes through as an entrepreneur, like cash flow, payroll, hiring salespeople, dealing with clients, the sleepless nights. And so we just chuckled. And so we just basically followed the guide. And from that, we built this great company.
Well, and so back then, like I obviously the scaling up methodology is an amazing methodology, but they didn't have, and I think it's gotten a lot better in the last since he came out with the scaling up. How do you build the core values? And you guys your guys' core values, you guys landed on some pretty legit core values. They were designed fairly well. They stood for big ideas. They were simple. I mean, how did you guys figure even that piece out? Because I think that's the piece that a lot of people get wrong is the design.
Yeah. And so what was it? It was like the Mission to Mars exercise. So I remember we went down to Seattle. We're from Vancouver, so we went down to Seattle and we took the team there on a 2-day retreat. And then we sort of went through the whole Mission to Mars example, our framework, and we defined our core values. And for us, our core values are the non-negotiable laws of our organization. We'll live a financial loss to live them. We will free up anyone's future. It could be someone who's like a second mom or a best friend, or a high-performing salesperson, whatever. It doesn't matter. Myself included, I could get bounced out of the organization if I don't live our core values. And so our core values are pretty simple: find a better way, admire people, wow customer experience, and passionate about making a difference. And people, the neat thing about our core values is the people that don't get it, they find it corny and they don't want to be here. And the people that do get it, they love it and they've found heaven. And so it really accelerates our culture. It pushes our flywheel faster.
Yeah, no, like I talk about this a lot in the book. In chapter 3, I say, look, like chapter 3, it becomes a magnet for talent, and it helps people that don't believe in it to self-select out of the organization. And it's funny though. I think you guys intuitively landed through that Mission to Mars exercise on solid values, because and I haven't told you this story. I sat in this diner in Cambridge, Massachusetts in June of 2008. Like I said, a little bit hungover. I know you didn't partake in that. You were.
Oh, stop it! I was with you the whole time.
I think you were in church or something that night. No, I remember.
We were wandering through the streets of Boston at 3:00 in the morning.
We've had some fun. You and I, we've had New York City, Boston. You and I have had some good times. And so the next morning I sat there and I pulled up my core values that were, they were well intentioned, but they just weren't designed very well. And what I figured out, and I literally pulled your guys' up. I read those 4 core values in this morning in 2008, June of 8. And I said, wow, these stand for their big ideas. They're in the tone of their organization. They're simple, and they stand for something important. And I just went and I rewrote my core values. So I rewrote mine from these 6 values, 76 words, into 4 core values: do work, live zen, break the box, wow everyone. Yeah. And I think I stole the wow from you guys a little bit, but I brought it. It didn't matter, but R&D, baby, rip off and duplicate. And so I took them into my company, and right away I noticed that when you design them for high utility value, they start to become, and I talk about this in my book, the language of the organization. They start to be the way people talk about each other. They start to be the way people hold each other accountable. I say in the book that you need to be unapologetic about what your values are. To your point, they're non-negotiable. What is your experience with values becoming the language of Nurse Next Door and the other businesses you've been a part of?
In what sense? Pretty big question.
Like what I say is in the book, in the core value equation, David Zellman, this is work I do with David Zellman, which his whole position is that the conversations we have equal the actions we take, equal the results in our businesses, in our lives. And my belief is that if the core values are the words of the organization, the language of the organization, they then become the conversations of the organization, which then becomes the actions and then the results of the organization. So my full belief is the reason core values become the results is because they become the conversation, the language of the organization. When someone's not doing something or they are doing something, you reference the core values and that becomes the words you use. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So what is your, you being someone who I consider a super user of core values, how have you seen that come to life in your businesses or in your life?
Well, it's been the best of times and it's been the worst of times. I think, just some rambling thoughts here. I think once you have your core values defined, and by the way, I want to put this out there that core values aren't right or wrong. They're just right for an organization. So if you're in investment banking, the core values will look completely different. And it doesn't make them wrong. It's just those are the values of that organization. And so for us, we have our core values. I think the most important thing is we attract the right people first. Because when you don't attract the right people, I find it almost impossible to push people to buy in. It's already in you. For example, you said you ripped off one of our core values. You didn't rip anything off. You just saw something that went, oh, click, that's me. So our core values are us. That core value is you. What we found when we would bring people on who didn't buy in, who it wasn't part of their DNA, they would game the system. So we have this one thing called one core value, admire people. And we would actually, from an operational perspective, we want to hold people accountable. Mm-hmm. And people can twist it and they can go, well, you're not admiring me. You're being too harsh on me. You're doing this or that. And it's like, no. It has nothing to do with core values. It's do what you say you're going to do it. But so our negative experience has been if you bring in the wrong people, they game the system. Yeah. And anyone can game the system. But if you have the right people, not only do they embrace it, they love it, and they will actually chase people out who do not live the core values because they don't want to be associated with them. And it has nothing to do with being an introvert or an extrovert, being financial or creative or whatever. Those can all be variables. The core values are the non-negotiables that stand the test of time.
Yeah, they transcend all those things. I have a term for what you're talking about. I call that weaponizing core values. That they get weaponized against the organization. And I think there's an opportunity in the descriptive to kind of protect the organization through that. So I have a pretty robust methodology that I actually iterated on this for a long time to figure out how can I make it. I call it the give take, where there's lots of give and there's some takes in there as far as like from an accountability standpoint. And then when the team starts doing those things, to your point, that's not admiring people. My number one core value in my last business was people matter. And people say, that's not people matter, Darius. I go, no. It doesn't say person matters. It says people matters, plural, not singular. So I get that you may not like this, but that doesn't say, I'm not trying to please you. I'm trying to keep a business here. So yeah, I think it's funny. The other thing I learned was the more alive they are, the more people who, to your point, who are trying to game the system will weaponize because they're going to see how much leverage they can get. And to your other point, your team will chase them out. Because they have a language of accountability, and that's the important part. I love that you have had these same experiences. By the way, I think every company has these experiences. They just don't have the values to lean on.
Yeah,
unless they've done a good job of building them. So my question for you is, what was the number one thing that you guys did in your mind to make them come to life in your organization?
Oh, that one's easy. One, firing our biggest client. And remember, that was a mistake, but at the time it made sense. Two, letting someone go who was like my second mom, who I think the world of. And she lived 3 of the 4 core values. She was amazing at them, but the 4th one, she could never find a better way. She was completely resistant to change. And so we had to free up her future. And this is a person who I considered my second mom. So people knew that our core values were not negotiable at all. If you're willing to do that, they know they can't game it.
Yeah, wow. That's powerful. And so let's fast forward. The business. You guys fired your biggest client. You guys pivoted into a franchise model. How big is Nurse Next Door now from a franchise perspective?
Last time we checked, a couple of hundred locations across the U.S., Canada, and Australia.
Wow.
And we're looking to expand into Europe.
And so, what's the goal with it? How big are you guys trying to get it to nowadays?
It's not necessarily a goal around number of locations or people. The goal is to make a million lives better every single year. We do that. We've accomplished it. And, it's funny. A bunch of us have been to Singularity University. We may change that goal. We actually want to have a huge impact. And so we could be thinking about how do we make a billion lives better?
Yeah. That's so cool. So we have one of our former guests was we got Robert Ellis. Hey, Coach Robert. He's had a leadership at Singularity. So he does coaching from Essence. I don't know if you've ever met him before, but he might be coming to GOT this year. So heads up on that one. Yeah. Singularity's got some cool stuff going on there. So you've built this business, and how many years ago did you guys bring in a CEO to run it?
Kathy came in 6 years ago.
And how long was the transition process for you to step out of, for you and John to step out of the roles to see a completely step out where you're just like, we're show up when you want to show up type of deal?
Well, it was an interesting journey. So I stepped away back in 2011 from day-to-day operations because we needed one CEO, and we decided, we'll give John a shot. So that would have been actually, he started 2012, and then he tried it for a bit, and we realized we needed to make a bit of a change to hit the goals that we wanted to hit. So Kathy came in. So for me, that transition was easy because it already happened. For John, it was a lot. He just had to go through that process a little later than me. It took a few years.
And so in 2018, I remember you and I were in Boston, and you just we were in the alumni group together at GOT, guys. So I reunited with Ken. He saved my seat for me in 2017. Hey man, we're old friends. You gotta hook up.
Anyone who knows the program, that's a big deal.
Saving a seat's a big deal.
Yeah.
Well, hey, it worked out, by the way, because I'm chairman this year. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for it. And so, we were at 17 was my first year there. Second year, was that the year that you ran, right?
Yeah, I ran for office, mayor of Vancouver in 2018.
So walk us through that. I mean, you were kind of like, your name got kind of thrown into a hat. You're not a politician. Were you involved in politics before you decided to make this move?
Well, that's the funny thing. I hate politics, I hate being political. And anyone who's worked in an organization, I don't think anyone goes, "Hey, let's play politics at work." And so it's not in my nature. But I was actually recruited. And so there's this political party in Vancouver, and they're looking for a candidate, or some people were. And so they asked me to be the candidate. And I said, hell no. I don't want to do that. Are you nuts? And this was around spring break of 2018. So after I got the call, I chuckled, and I called my friend, or I spoke to my kids and told them what happened, and they had a good laugh too. So we drive down to California. We come back, and I meet one of the individuals, and he tries to talk me into it again. So I said, okay, look, give me 48 hours, and I'm going to talk to a bunch of people, and I'll get back to you. And so I spoke to a former premier of the province. I spoke to a bunch of other political people, community leaders, and our CEO and my family. And after the 48 hours, I said, thank you, but no thanks. And then the next day, I spoke to my CEO, or our CEO, and my physio. He's a friend, and they both just said, look, you're nuts. You're going to regret not running. And
why did they think that?
Well, all the reasons I gave them for not running were actually pretty whiny. Like, you know what? I enjoy my life right now. I have time freedom. I can hang out with my kids. It's going to be tough. and they knew me. I actually want to make a difference. I do want to make and that's not, how do I put this? I don't say that because it sounds good. I actually want to do that. My background is I went to 5 elementary schools in 7 years because we couldn't make rent, son of immigrants. And so I was given all these gifts, being born in the right part of the world, getting an education, and having an opportunity to start a business. And I just want to pay it forward. And so I said, okay, I'm going to do it. And so we had a really short runway, it was a complete gong show. And it was the wildest experience, and almost won it. Came 957 votes short, finished in second place against a politician. He had been a member of parliament for 7 years. To give you some perspective, 171,000 people voted, and I lost by 957
Wow.
votes.
Yeah. Hey, Americans, every vote counts. Yeah. So, wow. So 100, say that again, 171,000 people voted?
Yep.
And out of 171,000, that's like so 900, what is that? Like 5.5 of half of a percent?
Yeah.
Almost?
Literally 0.6.
Oh my gosh. So wow, that's amazing.
And if we had, we figure if we had 2 more days, we would have won it. If the election was held on a Monday versus a Saturday, we would have won it.
Why?
Because we're making all this headway in certain communities. We're picking up 500 votes a day. People are coming over from other people that they committed to.
Wow. So hey, so back up for a second. So spring break, you get pitched to be the mayor, to run for the mayor of one of the most famous cities in the world.
Yep.
You laugh it off, and then I saw you at the end of April. You left early, so you bailed. So like 6 weeks later, you're like, I'm in, or 4 weeks later, you're like, I'm in. You and then when was the election?
Well, there's a nomination that I had to win on June 3rd, and then the election was, I think, October the 17th.
Well, so that's
October 19th. Yeah.
Yeah. So 6 months ish. So for 6 months, you dive into the world of politics. What was the most surprising thing to you? You told me some of this, but I want to hear the audience here. Like, what was the most surprising thing for you of going from never having experienced the world of politics to suddenly you're in a political race?
The amount of people that lie in politics. I knew some people lied, but it's just amazing. It's all cloak and dagger.
How so? Like, you don't have to give exact examples, but like, what would be I know people lie in politics. This is why we all hate our politicians, but like, that's like the playing field, right? Like, if you don't lie, how do you, they start lying about you, about like, what would be like one lie they said about you publicly that you're like, this is crazy?
One lie. You know what? I'll give you something. No, this isn't a lie. This is just really sleazy. So to win the nomination for the party that I ran with, I filled out a nomination package, and I had to put anything that came up or that could possibly come up in my life, if it made the press, that could be a problem. And so, look, I'm not a saint, but there's nothing that I'm ashamed of, or I wouldn't have run. And so, sure, I put in anything that could be an issue. And some of the people that lost the nomination, they had their buddies that were on the board of the political party, and they took my nomination package, put it in a brown paper bag, and gave it to every single reporter in the city.
What?
Yes, it is crazy.
But this is confidential, right? They're not. This is not public.
Exactly. It's it's completely nuts. It's completely unethical. They didn't care.
Oh man. And so what was there anything out of that was embarrassing that came out?
Not embarrassing, but funny story. So when I was 18, I failed to stop for a police officer. Look, I was a kid driving with a bunch of buddies in our car. The music's blasting, speeding, I guess, not crazy. We're downtown Vancouver. And so the cop lights a ticket, we're going off, but I wasn't paying attention. And so a few blocks later, notice this, we get pulled over, and I get a I get a ticket for, I forget, like failing to stop for an officer or dangerous driving or something. And it might have been like it was actually a big deal. And so I put this in my nomination package. I don't really care, right? And so this thing gets leaked to the media. A couple of news outlets, they called me about it, and it's like, yeah, that happened, whatever.
Yeah, you were 18 and you're driving. Who cares?
I was 18, and they said, yeah, this isn't even newsworthy. But
yeah, that's lame.
But the third media outlet, they ran with it. But
the aggressive 18-year-old driver.
Awesome though, because I just said, yeah, look. It was me. That happened, but guess what? I was 18 at the time. I wasn't prepared to be mayor back then. I am now. And the funny thing is, you know how one of the guys that I ran against, his buddies pulled the nomination package and leaked it. Well, they started to quiz, this guy and the person that leaked my package, and the article actually makes them look like fools. It's like, come on, guys, this is ridiculous. This is just dirty politics. And it actually made me more of a human. So people are like, yeah, you know what? Everyone does stupid stuff when they're 18 years old. Yeah, we like Ken, whatever. And I probably got votes out of it. So it actually worked out.
Yeah, have you ever seen Dave Chappelle Sticks and Stones?
I've seen, I think, all of his stuff, so I forget the titles.
It came out like a year or two ago, and he's like, I want to do an impersonation for you, and he's like, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna look at every single thing you've ever done in your entire life that's wrong, and I'm gonna give you tons of shit for it. And he starts like, who am I? And then he's like, you don't know? It's you. It's like come on, people. Like, yeah. The world would be a better place if we were all like, hey, nowadays it's all on the internet, right? If you do anything wrong. But like there's plenty of things I've done in my life that I'm like, that I'm neither proud nor ashamed of. I don't even care. It's just being a human being. You experience things in your life. And it's one person. Like, listen, unless you went into a monkhood when you were 16, 15 years old and stayed in a mortuary, but basically a monastery, and did nothing wrong, like, it's pretty hard to not do things that like people can't judge you on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'm sure there are like 9 people like that in the world, and I'm sure they're really nice people, but I don't want to hang out with them.
Yeah. Yeah, and does that mean that they're the best person to get stuff done too? Probably not.
Yeah, but also, you know what? Everyone has stuff in their lives. Like this myth of the perfect person who has the perfect relationship, he has the perfect kids, that doesn't worry about anything. He's always been an upstanding citizen. He's never made a mistake ever in their life, or hasn't done something stupid. They don't exist, but we hold people up to the standard.
Oh, it's insanity, man, and I think it stems from a lot of like, I don't want to go there right now. I think it stems from a lot of like old school religious stuff. So I'll drop it because I have very negative statements. Anyone who wants to judge me on the shit I've done, you can go fuck off. Because everyone, to your point, has done things that they shouldn't do in their lives. That's called living. So let's talk about this. So you're considering running again?
Okay. Unless there's a family health issue, or my businesses are going out of business, because I have a responsibility to so many people. If unless those things happen, I'm running. Vancouver's the city that I love. I'm not doing it. This is not a stepping stone for anything. Look, for me, being mayor of Vancouver is deeply personal. I have family, friends, neighbors, co-workers, people that I mentor. They're all leaving the city. And I have 4 boys, 11 through 19 now, and none of them see a future for themselves in Vancouver. So this one's worth fighting for. And that's why I spend a lot of time on it, because I want our city back.
What's the, I mean, like I just came from, I live in Austin, Texas now, and I moved from San Francisco, and a lot of people are like, dude, San Francisco's being ran into the ground. Is it similar, that where it's too liberal, or what's the issue with the city that's causing like issues in your opinion?
I don't think it's too liberal. And I know there's like a divide. I think the city should be non-politicized, and we'll get there in a sec. But the issues are very similar to San Francisco. People are getting priced out of the market. People can't live there unless you make a fortune. And there's, an opioid crisis going on. And so you have a lot of people with mental health and addiction issues that are basically living on the streets. And then there's a lot of crime as well. And the city's just poorly run. So what happens is they have to raise more in taxes, which basically hammers our businesses, and they're actually getting pushed out of business. And people are getting pushed out of their homes because they can't afford the property taxes. And that all stems from just being poorly run.
Yeah, so typical governmental mismanagement. So it's not just a North America. It's not just it is a North American thing. It's not just a American thing.
Oh yeah.
It's funny. Who was it? It wasn't Sam. Sam Penny, but he was on the show. He's a BOGer, right?
Yeah.
There was another guy I was talking to down in Australia, and we were talking about COVID, and he was telling me half of Australia doesn't believes it's a hoax. And I said, "Oh, this is just an American thing? I thought this was an American thing." Yeah. So because we seem to be getting I think you guys finally have it like fully under control, where you can kind of.
No, things are starting to ramp up here. Like BC, so that's the province that I live in. It was a role model for literally the world. We had our chief medical officer was written up in the New York Times. We were crushing it. And then things slipped, and now our cases are, they're not crazy to the extent they are just south of the border, but we're getting like about 100 cases a day now in the province, which by Seattle, Portland standards is incredibly low, but that's still a big number.
Yeah, I plead the fifth. we like 40,000 a day in the States, and that's like a good day.
Yeah. Well, it's unfortunate. I see both perspectives, but I think the deeper issue is with social media. People are getting brainwashed. And it doesn't matter what side of the equation you're on.
Both sides.
Yeah, you could identify as a Democrat or a Republican, and if you're a Democrat, you get the Democratic feeds, and if you're a Republican, you get Fox News, and that's a sad thing. So, as an outsider, being non-American but having lived on the border basically my entire life and having loved I continue to love America, it's really sad to see what's going on in your country.
It's crazy.
Your country's being divided. I remember a time when it didn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat, you could talk to each other. And now the place is getting polarized, and it's sad to see.
I saw a thing in the news yesterday that it was a person, because I have friends on both sides of the aisle, and I will say that I tend to mute. On Facebook you can say like, don't show me their post for 30 days. I've been doing that for a couple of them for the past couple of months because I can't deal with their political posts. They're so nauseating, and it's mostly on the right side of the aisle, but the left has its moments too. And I'm a centrist. And so I saw a post where they showed a Trump rally in Canada, and they claimed 70,000 people went. Is this fake news, or is this like 2 days ago?
I didn't see it, but
is there a huge Trump supporter group up there?
I don't think so.
It seemed weird to me. I'm like, why the hell would a Canadian want to support Trump? It was just
let's put it this way. I've been watching the news over the last couple of days because there's been a lot of things that have happened in my hometown. We've just called a provincial election, and one of the councillors might get bounced for a conflict of interest charge.
Wow.
So I've been acutely in tuned to the media over the last 2 days. I would have noticed a 70,000 person Trump rally.
I figured that'd be big news in Canada if you guys had almost 100,000. I think it was 700 people. They added 2 zeros, and it was a bunch of expats that live up there now. Yeah. I don't know, man. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw it.
Well, you got to remember, outside of Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal, and I want to be respectful to Calgary and Edmonton. You'll never see 70,000 people in any rally in any other city but the big three. And we have social distancing. We don't even have the room to have 70,000 people in these areas.
All right. Hey, you Trump supporters, quit pushing your bullshit. It's fake. That's fake news coming straight from my Canadian brother. Well, man, I told you an hour would go by quick. We're almost there.
Yep.
What'd you think? Was that quicker than you thought?
That was super quick.
Yeah, it always is. I'm just that engaging. So, brother, where can people find you? Where can they connect with you?
You know what? The best thing to do is hit my website, kensim.ca. If you live in Vancouver or British Columbia, just subscribe, and you'll get my newsletter.
Cool. kensim.ca. I'm going to go join that. Brother, so much gratitude. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Hang on for a second. I'm going to close out the show, and we'll talk for a minute. Guys, the book is out. Go support it. Buy it. It's on Amazon. Sign up for us on Facebook at The Real Darius M. We got a couple more shows. We're not going to be doing 13 shows a week. I know you're upset. We're going to be bringing it down to probably like 2 or 3 shows a week for the next few weeks, and then even a little further down, but to probably twice a week. But we got some great shows coming up. We got Adam Jablin tomorrow. Next week we got Rand Stagen and a few other folks coming on the show. So excited for all the great shows we have coming up. Go to my website, www.therealdarius.com. Please sign up for my newsletter. I'm especially with the book out now. We're starting to put out a ton of great stuff through the website, and I want to get you on there. I promise, no spamming. And with that said, my brother Ken, love you, appreciate you.
Love you too, bud.
Peace, everybody. See you guys tomorrow.